in Texas, we work to save those lives.
I just want to talk about my state really quickly, since we're talking about the border and how my colleagues have been down there once or twice, and so they feel like they know everything that happens at my border because they go on a little field trip. Damn! And recently, my governor, who seemingly does nothing but atrocious things, decided that he was going to order that migrants, and this doesn't say it, but specifically the headlines that we saw were children as well as pregnant mothers, be pushed back into the Rio Grande. Currently, the DOJ is suing my governor because he decided that he wanted to use razor wire. This is not fixing fentanyl, as far as I'm concerned.
You know by now that if Jasmine Crockett is speaking, then I'm sat and listening. She's not surgically dismantling Republican hypocrisy, oftentimes to their face.
Are you aware that China does not like the United States and that has engaged in espionage activities against the United States?
I don't have any personal professional knowledge of that.
Okay, well, I suggest you read Breitbart.
So it was suggested that you should read Breitbart, and I couldn't let it go. And so just for the general public, because I don't want anybody to believe that that's a good idea, I just got on Google, which if you have a cell phone, we can all do that. Breitbart News Network is an American far-right syndicated news, opinion, and commentary website founded mid-2007 by American conservative commentator Andrew Breitbart. Breitbart News content has been described as misogynistic, xenophobic, and racist by academics and journalists. So I don't know that that's where I want anybody to take their cues from, especially when they're trying to run this country. That part.
She's addressing issues that she and her constituents know all too well about, being from a border state. And during a hearing on the southern border, in the face of ugliness and bigotry being spewed, she opted to confront such things head on by calling out her own governor by name.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for the work that you do. I just want to talk about my state really quickly, since we're talking about the border and how my colleagues have been down there once or twice, and so they feel like they know everything that happens at my border because they go on a little field trip. But I live in this state. I have also legislated specifically in this state, the state of Texas. And recently, my governor, who seemingly does nothing but atrocious things, decided that he was going to order that migrants, and this doesn't say it, but specifically the headlines that we saw were children as well as pregnant mothers, be pushed back into the Rio Grande. Currently, the DOJ is suing my governor because he decided that he wanted to use razor wire. This is not fixing fentanyl, as far as I'm concerned. Because you're the expert, do you believe that razor wire or ordering that women and pregnant mothers and children be pushed into the water, do you believe that that's fixing our fentanyl crisis?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. I would say majority of the fentanyl is coming through the ports of entry, and our focus should be where the problem is predominantly.
Thank you so much. You can go ahead. And when you talk about ports of entry, I want to be clear, because sometimes in this chamber, it seems like we only have one border and only one way to get into the United States, and somehow it's through Mexico. I just want to be clear. There's a northern border. There's also plains. Are you of the impression that drugs only come from Mexico?
Thank you, Congressman. Oftentimes, machinery parts like pill presser parts, dye-mold parts, they will come through other countries to the United States and smuggled southwards to be built into pill pressers. So there's the business traffic goes in all directions and across all ways in order to produce the final product.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I think we need to go back to step one in this process.
Crockett touched upon the brutality of the allegedly pro-life Governor Greg Abbott's approach to the border, approach that has resulted in the Department of Justice planning legal action against the state of Texas.
The Department of Justice is threatening to sue the state of Texas. That's only if Governor Greg Abbott does not remove a floating barrier along the Rio Grande River by tomorrow. The DOJ says the state's actions not only violate federal law, but raise humanitarian concerns.
People need to wake up. because it's costing our taxpayer dollars, but sadly it's resulting in the death of innocent people.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott recently signed off on placing this floating barrier along the Rio Grande earlier this month.
In response to horrific reports from the southern border involving things like a 4-year-old girl passing out in 100-degree heat after she was pushed back towards Mexico by Texas National Guards, a pregnant woman who became trapped in the razor wire that's been put up and had a miscarriage. The state trooper has went on record to say that he was under orders not to give migrants any water.
They're bumping into that razor wire without being able to see it is just extremely cruel and barbaric.
And if you're wondering, does Greg Abbott's cruelty end at the border? Well, of course not. It bleeds into his policies across the state of Texas.
Effectively bans abortions after about 6 weeks, sooner than many women even know they're pregnant. It's enforced in part by allowing anyone, anywhere to sue providers or others who help women get an abortion.
The Texas Heartbeat Bill is now law in the Lone Star State. Millions of children lose their right to life every year because of abortion. In Texas, we work to save those lives.
This week, Texas passed a law that literally makes it illegal for construction workers to have mandatory water breaks. This in the middle of a historic heat wave.
A new Texas law, HB 2127, aims to take away workers' water breaks, even as the state deals with the record-setting heat wave. Temperatures in many parts of the state have stayed consistently above 100 degrees, but a new Texas bill, which goes into effect September 1st, will prevent cities from enacting or enforcing water breaks for workers. At least 13 people have already died in Texas from heat-related illnesses this year. Workers like Felipe Pascal, a construction worker who collapsed and died of hyperthermia, and a postal worker, Eugene Gates, who collapsed and died on his roof. Workers say if companies are allowed to end water breaks, the problem will get much worse. 100-degree days are now occurring far more frequently and earlier. By late July, the city of Austin had experienced 11 days in a row with temperatures over 105 degrees, breaking a century-old record. Still, Governor Abbott signed the bill earlier this year, which bans cities from enacting any worker protections not covered in state law. This includes local minimum wage laws, paid sick leave, and water breaks among workers. Activists have labeled this the Death Star bill. Workers and activists are organizing to denounce this law before it takes effect. The city of Houston has filed a lawsuit claiming that the law is unconstitutional, and Austin is also weighing its options to challenge the bill.
All this from a man who presents himself whenever the cameras are rolling as a pro-life conservative. Here he is overseeing some of the most radical policies that can result in serious injury and drowning deaths. But thankfully, as hearings continue on the matter, there are representatives like Ms. Crockett who are voicing their disdain over such barbarity.
But I live in this state. I have also legislated specifically in this state, the state of Texas. And recently, my governor, who seemingly does nothing but atrocious things, decided that he was going to order that migrants be pushed back into the Rio Grande.
And instead of recognizing that and trying to work with the federal government to make sure that things continue to go in the right direction, and also perhaps do something about comprehensive immigration reform, Governor Abbott engages in another level of cruelty to appeal to his right-wing base. That's all it is. It's not about solving the problem. It's about hurting people to please his right-wing base. It's Greg Abbott's own personnel that are telling on him. This was a whistleblower, and so I am hopeful that the investigation that the federal government does is going to turn up evidence that can hold people accountable for this.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.